Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Friday Ramblings. We're going to break down something a little special for you tonight, or today, depending on when you watch this, because we're going to cover one of the most iconic franchises in American cinema history. We're covering something that has been revived a couple of times, and as such is still current, present time, interesting to talk about. And that is the wonderfulness that is Planet of the Apes. Now, Planet of the Apes did start off as a 1963 novel by French author Pierre Boulet, originally called La Planète des Singes. Probably saying that horribly. Translated in English as Planet of the Apes or Monkey Planet in the UK. The plot did differ a bit from the movies, but the basic idea remained the same of regular, real world, as we like to think of ourselves, humans find themselves in a civilization run by apes, where humans are the lower primates and species, and shenanigans ensue. Of course, it would go on to see a 1968 film adaptation, which would set off a whole massive franchise. So, we're going to go through that real quick, because this is one of our iconic breakdowns, where we give you just a little teeny hint of an entire franchise, so you can whet your appetite and have a little base knowledge to hopefully get you to give some of this stuff a try. Some different light reflections here. Oh well. Now, the original film series, as I said before, started in 1968 with Planet of the Apes, including working with Rod Serling, creator of The Twilight Zone, to pen the screenplay. It was Serling who introduced the idea that this was a world post-nuclear warfare. For those of you who have never seen the movie, the basic plot of it is as follows. Charlton Heston plays 20th century American astronaut George Taylor, who, after returning from space, finds himself on a strange planet where intelligent apes dominate mute primitive humans. He eventually encounters sympathetic chimpanzees Zira and Cornelius, and discovers a ruined Statue of Liberty and signs of a nuclear warfare, letting him know, and the audience know, the big swerve, that it was Earth all along, and that the reason the apes had taken control is because, well, as we said, nuclear warfare, humans ruined it for ourselves. This scene in which he comes upon the ruined Statue of Liberty and fully comprehends exactly where he was and what had happened has become one of the most iconic scenes in Hollywood film history, and has been homaged and satired numerous times over the years by various people, including, quite infamously, in the Mel Brooks movie Spaceballs, which was primarily a Star Wars parody, but they threw in a little Planet of the Apes reference because it's Mel Brooks and he can do whatever he wants. It'll be funny. Planet of the Apes was a smash success with both critics and audiences from the get-go. It was one of the year's 10 biggest money makers in North America, taking in an estimated $22 million, which was nearly 4 times its budget. And again, we are talking $22 million in 1968 dollars. That is huge money. Earning rave reviews. And John Chambers, who was in charge of the makeup effects, was given an honorary Oscar at the 41st Academy Awards, the first ever given to a makeup artist. You also had an incredible score by Jerry Goldsmith, as well as costume designs by Morton Hawk, which also earned Oscar nominations. Although initially the film had been filmed to be a one and done, the success encouraged Fox Studios and the filmmakers Jacobs and Abrams to think about the future. We then got Beneath the Planet of the Apes, in which Paul Dehn would take over writing the script and became the primary writer for the franchise going forth. Charlton Heston was initially uninterested in a sequel, but agreed to shoot a few scenes if his character was killed off and his salary donated to charity. This meant that the script was altered to center on a new character, Brent, played by James Franciscus. The story follows Franciscus' character, an astronaut who, while searching for Heston's character of George Taylor, inadvertently follows him into the ape-led future. After encountering the apes from the first film, Brent finds Taylor imprisoned by a colony of subterranean human mutants who worship an ancient nuclear bomb. Apes Zira and Zaius return, as well as Cornelius, although he was replaced, originally played by Roddy McDowall, now played by David Watson, as McDowell was unavailable due to a scheduling conflict. War breaks out between the human mutants and the apes, leading to big drama. And although it was a major box office hit nearing the original's numbers, critics ravaged it and found it to be very far below the original Planet of the Apes. Still, the movie made a lot of money, so the franchise kept rolling along because, as we've discussed before, at the end of the day, as long as you can post a profit, studios will want to keep going. Despite the conclusion depicting the planet's nuclear destruction, more movies were made. This led to Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Fox shook up some behind-the-scenes stuff with a new director and reduced the budget from the second movie's $3.4 to $2.5 million. Although we did see the return of Roddy McDowall as Cornelius, which is good times because Roddy McDowall is an excellent actor. This time, to work around Beneath the Planet of the Apes' seemingly definitive ending, film took the series a new direction by transporting Zira and Cornelius back in time to the contemporary United States, reducing the amount of expensive sets and ape costumes, which also helped the reduced budget. In the film, Zira and Cornelius are initially accepted by American society, but the humans' fears that their children will bring about the domination of the human race by evolved apes leads to conflict. Of course, we got sympathetic humans and evil humans. That's how life goes about. We also got Ricardo Montalban showing up in this film, which is good times. Ooh. Woohoo! Sorry about that, folks. But yes, third film. Compared to its predecessors, Escape dealt more heavily on themes of racial conflict, which becomes a primary focus through the rest of the series. The film opened on May 21st, 1971, less than a year after Beneath, the previous movie. It's well received by critics, as by this point they understood that this was going to be an ongoing franchise and started viewing the works more as chapters in one great story instead of individual standalone films. This is important to note because, of course, as the decades went on and franchises became more status quo and the norm for pretty much any given movie, this perspective from critics that once you start getting into sequels, you need to view them in the perspective of them being part of a greater story, not just their own little individual pocket-sized piece of fiction, has influenced a lot of movie review styles and perspectives and philosophies. The movie performed well at the box office, though not as strongly as its predecessors. However, it did make enough of a profit for one more sequel. At least. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes took place in 1972, this time getting the budget once again slashed to $1.7 million. Conquest is set in a near future where humans have turned the apes into slaves. An ape named Caesar rises from bondage to lead an ape rebellion. Film opened on June 30th, 1972, and while reviews were mixed, the ending left the series open to another sequel, and Conquest was successful enough at the box office that Fox commissioned another film. Now this is important later on. Planet of the Apes, and beneath Planet of the Apes. Then, timeline-wise, they kind of went back to before Planet of the Apes for the next two films. So, what you got already is a chronological mishmash. It's like, first two films are pretty much pretty decent follow-ups from each other. Then, you have Escape and Conquest, which take place before the first two movies, but still in somewhat chronological order. Which leads us to Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which was the last of the classic franchise. Fox approved Battle of the Planet of the Apes with a $1.2 million budget, which was the lowest of the entire series. Filmmakers went in the project knowing that this would be the end of the series. Reduced budgets, reduced profits, and there's only so long you can go on a ride. Battle continued Conquest's focus on racial conflict and domination, but new creative heads, the Corringtons, discarded Den's pessimistic treatment in favor of a story with a more hopeful than ambiguous resolution. Battle follows Caesar as he leads the apes and their human subjects after a devastating war that destroyed much of the planet. It contends with both an attack by radiation-scarred human mutants, referencing the second movie, throwback, nice touch, as well as a coup attempt while he attempts to build a better society for both apes and humans. McDowell returns playing Caesar, this time instead of Cornelius, because of course, we're in a different timeline, there is no Cornelius yet. We also got Paul Williams playing an orangutan Virgil, Austin Stoker playing McDonald, and Claude Akins playing the gorilla General Aldo. Film opened on May 2nd, 1973. Again, this is key. From 68 to 73, only 5 years, they produced 5 movies. That is rapid turnaround time in filming by any franchise's standards. Basically, as soon as movies hit theaters and they knew they had profit to justify, they would start work on the next movie. Now, critics have offered various interpretations of the film message and its significance for the series. Particular attention was paid to the ambiguous imagery in the ending. Set over 700 years after the main events, the last scene depicts a statue of Caesar shedding a single tear as the lawgiver recounts Caesar's story to an integrated audience of ape and human children. By one interpretation, the statue cries tears of joy because the species have broken the cycle of oppression, giving the series an optimistic finale. However, other people interpret it as the statue weeping because racial strife still exists, implying the dystopian future of Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes as its direct sequel is still unavoidable. That's the joy of ambiguous endings. You can believe that this was all one coherent timeline, and that no matter what kind of current peace you see between the apes and the humans, we would still get the violence-filled future we saw in the first two movies. But there's more. Before everything was all said and done, they made a Planet of the Apes TV series. This was also done as part of the original franchise continuity. It only ran from September 13th to December 20th, 1974, airing 14 episodes. Once again, we get another spaceship crashing into the rough timeline of the first two movies. Spaceship is crewed by 3 astronauts, one of whom dies in the crash. The other 2 astronauts are unconscious but rescued by an old man who carries them to an old bomb shelter. After convincing the astronauts that this is a future Earth, and that, more importantly, it is run by apes, the astronauts try to figure out exactly how to return to their own time period and avoid being subjugated by the apes. It's basically the first two movies in an expanded storytelling format. Roddy McDowall returns once again, this time playing Galen, a young chimpanzee sent to ensure the safety of the 2 humans. This means, yes, Roddy McDowall, except for that second movie due to a scheduling conflict, is all over the classic franchise. He is the franchise's main player. As we said, they only ran 14 episodes. And in 1981, Fox re-edited 10 of the episodes into 5 television films. Each film combined 2 episodes and were given kind of off-the-wall episode titles to make them sound like they were direct follow-ups to theatricals. These would be Back to the Planet of the Apes, Forgotten City of the Planet of the Apes, Treachery and Greed on the Planet of the Apes, Life, Liberty, and Pursuit on the Planet of the Apes, and Farewell to the Planet of the Apes. The show's timeline placement is allegedly about 900 years before Taylor's crash in the original film, and 400 years after the events depicted in Battle of the Planet of the Apes. By depicting a future where apes dominates humans, it implies the logger's message of equality failed, giving weight to the more pessimistic interpretation of Battle's ending, and cementing things distinctly in that, yes, all those past movies were going to lead to what we saw in the first movie. There was also a Return to the Planet of the Apes animated series in 1975. This was done as a half-hour Saturday morning cartoon and concerned 3 different American astronauts, Bill Hudson, Jeff Allen, and Judy Franklin, who inadvertently journeyed to Earth's far future, finding 3 groups: mute humans who inhabit desert caves, subterranean human underdwellers, as a reference to the mutants of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and civilized apes who subjugate humans. NBC broadcast 13 episodes between September 6 and November 29, 1975. And the show never really achieved particularly strong ratings, kind of like the live-action show. So what does all this mean? It means that in less than 10 years, this franchise burned through 2 one-season TV shows, 1 live-action, 1 animated, and 5 movies. That is mind-blowing by today's standards, folks. Where even if you film movies back to back, they'll stretch out release dates so there's a good year and a half gap in between, so people have time to see one movie a couple times, fully embed in their fandom, and speculate about future plot points before the next movie comes out. Doing things basically once every year with a TV show the next year and another TV show the next year. I mean, that, in a lot of ways, that was the big failure of the original franchise. They were so eager and impatient to chase the success of that first couple movies that they burned through the franchise too quickly. Now, yes, this was back in the days before home release was a big thing, and definitely before streaming. Derp. But still, the amount of content they produced in that short a time is kind of staggering. Throughout the 80s, there were attempts to relaunch the film series. A reboot movie falling into development hell for over 10 years, one of the most protracted development periods in film history. Ultimately, many people would be involved in this, including Adam Rifkin, Oliver Stone, director Chris Columbus, James Cameron would step in at one point. All of this led to 1999 Fox hiring William Broyles Jr. to write a brand new script under the understanding that it would receive a July 2001 release date, otherwise giving Broyles considerable creative license. Which means, again, impatience, you're looking at a 2-year turnaround time to go from script to completed project. In steps in a man who is known to be a little bit quirky, and that would be Tim Burton. Yes, folks, in 2001, Tim Burton would bring in a reimagining of the original Planet of the Apes movie. Burton admitted he found the production arduous, largely due to the strict release schedule. Studio budgeted the film at $100 million, which led to Broyles' ambitious script having to be altered to reduce costs. We went from, in 30-odd years, from filming a movie on like $3 million budget to $100 million, and that wasn't enough movie money for the script. Inflation is crazy in Hollywood. Film stars Mark Wahlberg as astronaut Leo Davidson, who accidentally travels through a wormhole to a distant planet where talking apes enslave humans. He leads a human revolt and upends ape civilization by discovering that the apes evolved from the normal Earth primates who had accompanied his mission and had arrived on the planet years before, because they, Wahlberg was in the main astronaut shuttle, and some apes came out in like a little probe drone thing. They went through the wormhole first. Wormhole physics be crazy, yo. Even though he had followed what to him was, short time after, the apes had plenty of time to get there. Helena Bonham Carter played Chimpanzee R.E., while Tim Roth played the human-hating chimpanzee General Thade. The film received mixed reviews. Most critics believe it failed to compare to the original. Much of the negative commentary focusing on the confusing plot and twist ending, which I'll give you in super brief form, although many viewers did praise the special effects. The film did succeed at the box office, taking in $362 million worldwide. Fox had initially hoped for sequels, but the difficult production left Tim Burton unenthusiastic. and the film failed to generate enough cultural interest for the studio to pursue a serious follow-up. Sometimes that happens, especially when you're rebooting a franchise. You recognize, okay, technically it made us money, but director doesn't want to come back and do it. The general audience was like, yeah, it was alright, but yeah, we're not really demanding a sequel, and you walk away. As for the twist ending, okay. Leo decides to escape the planet of the apes and return to Earth. After saying farewell to the good-aligned apes, Leo, Mark Wahlberg's character, climbs aboard the undamaged pod that, came down first before his main shuttle, which kind of crashed, and returns to the present through the same wormhole phenomenon. Leo crashes in Washington, D.C. on Earth and looks up at what appears to be the Lincoln Memorial, only to find it is now a monument memorializing General Thade. A swarm of police officers, firefighters, and news reporters descend upon him, revealed to all be apes as Leo realizes he is on an ape-dominated Earth. This, again, it was a weird ending. The original Planet of the Apes said, okay, he was there, we were on Earth all along, we just got zapped to the future. This new movie is like, well, it's not really Earth. Earth Ape kind of came here and set things off. Although they still somehow ended up with a very human paralleling concept of civilization. But then I go back in time, but somehow I didn't just go back in time. I ended up on some weird parallel world where the apes either conquered Earth, or, even though I wasn't chasing apes through the wormhole, or it's on a different Planet of the Apes where they actually evolved a civilization even closer to humanity's, including having a Lincoln Memorial-esque monument to an ape that happens to look exactly like the bad guy ape. It's just Burton was going for his quirky Burton stuff, but the shock factor didn't kick in properly. Which, again, is why the audience really didn't care to see a sequel. I've seen the movie. It's not a bad movie in and of itself as a standalone. But the ending failed the movie. And frankly, I've never really been upset that it didn't get a sequel. The movie also features Michael Clark Duncan, Paul Giamatti, Lisa Marie Smith, some often billed simply as Lisa Marie, Tim Roth, I think we mentioned, but he was General Thade. It's a thing. All this leads around to 4 years later, in 2005, screenwriters Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver developed a concept for a new Planet of the Apes film designed to go completely back to the beginning, ignore the Tim Burton movie, start fresh from scratch in a movie that does its own thing but has clear parallels and homages to the original franchise. Their film would eventually be called Rise of the Planet of the Apes. In this one, the film does the best thing they could do, which is, hoping it would get sequels, they decided to start at the beginning. Amazing concept. Instead of going for that weird sci-fi thing with a twist ending that hints at a bunch of stuff that happened that you hadn't seen yet, they start at chapter 1 of how you end up with a Planet of the Apes. And again, we're going to go through plots real quick here, folks. The basic idea is that a research lab, in an attempt to cure Alzheimer's, is experimenting on chimpanzees, and a chimpanzee born to one of the chimpanzees being experimented on with this viral gene therapy drug is born with hyper-intelligence, to the point that even after a year of being born, it is showing intelligence equivalent to a several-year-old human child. The ape is given the name Caesar, which was a reference to the leader ape from the later ape movies that take place earlier in the timeline. See, we're not doing the back and forth slingshotting here, folks. Who, after experiencing the good and bad of human nature, as well as learning the fact that as a chimpanzee with human intelligence, he does not belong anywhere, decides to build a place for him to belong by raising the intelligence of other captive apes. Unfortunately, as the research lab, now it should be noted that this all takes place over a series of years. Caesar lives with the head scientist, played by James Franco, for years in peace before things go bad, simply put. And the research labs continue development of the drug, trying to perfect it and make it better. Turns out that the drug, because they had been kept working it on chimpanzees, it, being a viral-based drug, not only infected one of the human scientists, but mutated inside him, proving to actually be fatal to humans. Acting much like a cold or the flu, although killing in a relatively short span of time. Yes, I know, looking back now, some people are going to get like... I'm going to go ahead and say this real quick. Some people are going to get weird COVID vibes, but again, this movie was made in 2011. That wasn't a thing then. We did have, other weird flu variants. And of course, if you are immunocompromised, the flu can super mess you up. There was a basis for this. But let's just move on now. Let's stick with the fiction. The twist end of the movie shows that after Caesar and his small population of hyper-intelligent apes claim a park outside San Francisco to build their own little commune in, hopefully, theoretically, living in peace, this scientist infects another guy who was an airline pilot whose job allowed him to fly around the world, infecting other humans, thus setting off a plague that, hint, hint, is most likely going to be directly responsible for the end of humanity instead of the thermonuclear warfare. Important things to note. Also, it does keep the majority of the apes. There were a couple jerk apes, including one specific one, who, yes, I know, kitty, not right now, who, this is not Planet of the Kitties, it's Planet of the Apes, but that even the jerkiest of the apes does not immediately think that open warfare and eradication of humanity is a good idea. Humanity created their own end, it just happened to also raise up the apes at the same time. This is an important plot point because the film was a major box office hit, taking in $482 million globally, more than 5 times its $93 million budget. Also, Caesar was portrayed by Andy Serkis via performance capture acting. This would also be the gentleman behind the motion capture, performance capture acting, however you want to say it, of Gollum from the Lord of the Rings franchise. He does a very good job with this stuff. The special effects, which were done by Weta, earned the film 2 Visual Effects Society Awards and an Oscar nomination, among other accolades. 3 years later, Again, think about that. They took 3 years, unlike the original franchise, which showed up like a year and a half later with the first sequel. We got Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Box allocated budget of $40 million, although the ultimate budget increased to $170 million. Original writers Jaffa and Silver returned to pen the script and produce, and the studio quickly signed Andy to reprise his role as Caesar. The director, Rupert Wyatt, did not return due to production and scheduling issues and was replaced by Matt Reeves. Set 10 years after Rise, the film establishes that the simian flu has killed most humans. Caesar struggles to maintain peace as his ape community is drawn to violent clashes with nearby human survivors, many of whom, not knowing the full story of where the simian flu came from, blames it on the apes because, hey, the apes rose up as we started dropping from this weird virus that didn't exist before the apes got smart. Whoopsie whoopsie, they must have done it intentionally. Bad thoughts, bad PR leads to violence. And thus, Caesar must strive to find peaceful resolution without losing everything he believes in, which is that the apes do not have to be everything humans are. This time around, the lead human characters were played by Jason Clarke as new character Malcolm, Kerry Russell as Ellie, and Gary Oldman as Dreyfus. The film was received very well by critics who found it a strong follow-up to Rise, and it performed very strongly at the box office, taking in $711 million in worldwide grosses. Once again, the special effects received several honors, including 3 Visual Effects Society Awards and an Oscar nomination. 2010 would bring us War for the Planet of the Apes, which would continue the storyline, this time at $150 million budget. The film depicts the apes and humans in blatant armed conflict, following Caesar and his followers as they track down the mysterious Colonel, a human paramilitary leader, while searching for a new home. That will hopefully allow them to escape the violence as, again, Caesar's not a general. He is a social builder. Woody Harrelson played the villainous Colonel, and Steve Zahn plays Bad Ape. It earned widespread critical acclaim. Reviewers praised the effects and narrative and found the film a fitting conclusion to Caesar's story. It earned $491 million at the worldwide box office and got numerous awards and nominations, including nominations for Best Visual Effects and Best Special Visual Effects at the 90th Academy Awards and 71st British Academy Film Awards, respectively. This brings us to the present, which is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. They had originally discussed the movie in October 2016, as they were getting ready to release War. Reeves said he expressed interest in making more Apes films, and that Plot Points had set a story up for further sequels. However, it was not rushed into being, and in April 2019, following the acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney, Walt Disney Studios announced that future Planet Apes films were in fact in development. It did take time. There were behind-the-scenes stuff going on. Of course, obviously, we did name drop it before. COVID kind of pushed everything back, scheduling-wise. But the movie happened. Taking place 300 years after the events of War for the Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes has shown a ape-centered civilization where humans have regressed to a feral primitive state. And we have conflict between different clans of apes over exactly what original ape leader Caesar's teachings were, and how to deal with humans, how much, they should be left alone, should we blatantly, domesticate them, kind of thing. A lot of the themes that would show up in the original movie. We are finally getting around to something that resembles the original movie. Good times. As I said, the movie has just come out. So we're not really sure exactly, when it's all said and done, where we're going to go from here. Is there going to be a fifth Apes movie? Are they going to start bouncing up and down the timeline? Because we've had major jumps in years between them. We just don't know yet. But we do know that this is a franchise that, even though it did lie dormant for a few decades as far as new releases went, the main movies, as I say, continued to be homaged throughout the 80s and 90s. Continued to be something that people in Hollywood wanted to revive, and more important, thanks to the rise of cable television and home video release, whether it's VHS or DVD, the movies continued to find new audiences even before the Burton reboot or this most recent reboot. Which means, even if Disney decides to end this current timeline continuity, that is no sign that the apes are done for good. There's one thing we have learned over the years about those damned dirty apes. It is that they will be back. All you need is foolish humans. I recommend giving the original Planet of the Apes movie a watch through. If you do want to see basically how to do a reboot that is not completely awful but missed the mark on how to revive a franchise for long-term continued success, give the Tim Burton one a try. Or if you're just a big Tim Burton fan, give it a try, because it's definitely got some Burton beats to it. I would highly recommend giving the current timeline series a watch through. Rise of the Planet of the Apes itself works almost completely as a pure drama movie. Yes, there's the sci-fi element of a fictional gene therapy virus thing making hyper-intelligent apes, but it's all framed in the idea of, look, this is what humans do to each other and to other species. And it may not be right or wrong. It may not be the only way to have a civilization. So there's some interesting philosophical quandaries in there. The sequels, hey, if you're that kind of guy or girl, or, however you identify, who likes these kind of things, go for it. Keep watching. You'll have a great time. And in the meantime and in between time, hey, we're about to roll into fall, and you know what that means. We are getting closer to Halloween themed spooky vlogs, which we love. Yep, one of the hallmarks of Roulette Productions and the Friday Ramblings is the Halloween season. This is your August vlog. We may start a little early in September. You never know. And we may even go back to doing more than one vlog a month for October to have that Halloween fun. You're only going to know if you stay tuned. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And when you've had enough apes, come on back for more. Because there's always entertainment to be found here at Roulette Productions. Bye-bye, folks.